Jet stepped onto the rock of Culver City, a half-full kit bag over his shoulder that contained all of his worldly possessions. He paused and looked around. It was, as he had been warned, a god-forsaken piece of rock. Following the other riffraff to the processing building, he was assigned a bunk in a dormitory along with 30 other men, given a meal, and after the briefest of instruction, with even less on personal safety, set to work as muscle, the unofficial term given to the least qualified and the most easily expendable worker. It was at his assigned workplace that several hours later he was introduced to Culver's Union delegates, 3 men, big and very muscled men. They approached, walking directly and purposefully towards Jet. Saying nothing, they half-circled him threateningly. Jet gave the biggest one a half glance and continued working. "Hey, newbie," said one. Jet looked at his chest and scanned his tags. He was an electronics supervisor, an indication he had more intelligence than his build suggested. According to the identification tag, his name was Hubley. Jet nodded. "We just came over to welcome you to the team," the man said affably. "Thanks," Jet replied, waiting for the inevitable follow-up. "It can be confusing, even dangerous in a new place," Hubley said, emphasizing the last word. "New guys are wise to join the union for protection." There was an overemphasis on the last word. "Yeah, so they told me at induction." "If you knew, then you should have taken up the offer," Jet shrugged. "The deduction is pretty steep." Hubley gave something between a smile and a grimace. "It's a dangerous place, Culver City. Anything can happen. You want to risk not being able to work again? And no compensation? Look, we all make hasty decisions, so maybe you'd like to reconsider." "You want 20% of all my salary? Seriously?" "Okay, look, you seem to be the kind of guy I could work with, so I'll give you one-off special discount, 15%. Jet didn't think that sounded much of a difference. "Thanks for the reminder and the offer. I'll think about it," he said dismissively. "You'd be wise not to think for too long." The man's smile had gone. Jet didn't like being threatened. He knew he was stirring up trouble, but he knew once he gave in there would be no stopping. "If you put it that way, I guess the answer's no." He had barely uttered the word before he felt a searing pain in his kidneys as one of the other thugs drove his clenched fist into the small of his back. Jet fell to his knees, gasping for air. But before he could recover, the two were holding him up. "See, accidents can happen when you least expecting them," Hubley said as he brought his clenched fist hard into Jet's stomach. It felt like a pile driver had smashed into him, but this time Jet wasn't allowed to fall as they held him upright. Hubley roughly grabbed Jet's jaw and forced his head back. The cruel smile. "Now, have you had time to rethink? Or do you need even more convincing?" People don't like pain, and Jet was no exception. He also knew that was what bullies relied on. The thought of a whole world of pain was usually enough for most people to back down. But Jet wasn't a person anymore. There wasn't enough pain in the whole galaxy to make up for what he had become. One way or another, he was going to get a beating. So he gritted his teeth and steeled his body, ready for the inevitable. As he did, words began to form in his mind. The long ago words drilled into his by one of the combat instructors. "There are 3 kinds of fights you'll get into," he had said. "Number 1, you can win. If you can't, then you fight like hell. Number 2, you are outnumbered. Forget all the heroics. A dead soldier isn't any use to anyone, especially his team. So then you run. Number 3, your number's up and there's no hope. Do you give up?" He'd been silent, waiting for any rookie who dared to venture an opinion. No, there's just a chance you're wrong. Then you do the least expected and you go in hard. 3 sounded like a good advice. So Jet lunged forward, grasping the arms that were holding him and kicking himself off the ground. His steel toe cap came up, sinking hard into Hubley's groin. The man immediately folded, and the thug's astonished friends eased their grip, just enough for Jet to fall backwards, pulling them off balance and into each other. As he began to slip out of their hold, he rolled back and spun, gripping one's arm and twisting it up behind the man's back. There was a sickening snap as the thug's shoulder dislocated. The second man was soon recovering from his surprise, and he lashed out his fist. Jet deflected it and smashed the heel of his hand into the bridge of the man's nose. Blood poured out, and he stumbled back, clutching at his face. Jet reached down and grabbed Hubley by the hair, twisting his face up. Thanks for the offer, but as you can see, I'm not the kind of person who has a lot of problems with accidents. It was at the end of Jet's next shift that he had his second union encounter. This time there were 4 of them. For a while he held his own, but it started to go really bad when, through a blood-red mist and flying fists, he saw Hubley and the other 2 running towards the fight. It was the last thing he was conscious of before every thought in his mind went dark. Jet groggily awoke and even more slowly became aware of he was in a bed, a proper bed and not a bunk. Crisp white sheets were draped over him, and an odour of disinfectant stung his nostrils. A nurse was hovering close by. "How are you feeling?" the woman said, seeing him awake. She smiled in anticipation of the obvious answer. Every part of Jet's body ached. "Probably." He suddenly stopped speaking as a sharp pain raced through his jaw. "The same as I look, I guess," he forced himself to reply. She gave a deep, chastising sigh. "Well, I suppose if anything good can be said, the consolation is that you're still alive." Jet wasn't convinced it was much of a consolation to how he felt. The Finns boys generally don't leave evidence. Jet wasn't sure being evidence was a good thing either. "Finn's boys?" he asked in curiosity. No, it was her turn to be curious. "You haven't heard of Finn?" "I've just arrived." "Obviously you have," she muttered before explaining. "They run a protection racket and control pretty much everything else." "I thought they were union." "On Culver, it's the same thing." "Oh, I see." "I'm not sure you do. You were lucky. Someone stopped them, or—" For a moment the nurse fell ominously silent. "Look, take my advice. Get off this place. You seem to have made the worst kind of enemies very quickly." Jet didn't want to move any muscle, never mind catch the next shuttle off. "Thanks for the advice. I'll think about it." "If you're the kind of person I think you are, you should. But if you choose to ignore my advice, you should be aware most folks who find themselves on the wrong side of Finn end up down the bottom of a disused mine shaft." "That's not in my plans." The woman smiled. "Yeah, but maybe you'll voluntarily jump down one shaft yourself when you get the bill for all the care we have given." She suddenly went quiet as a new voice entered the conversation. "He's covered by the union." The nurse looked nervously at the newcomer and quickly left. Jet couldn't turn his head to see who it was. He didn't need to as the man came in front of him. Immediately, Jet felt himself tense, and the resulting pain made him wince. It was Hubley, and Jet was in no condition to defend himself. Yet there was barely any fear. Instead, a kind of calm came over him. He had heard some say that it was how you felt just before death. Maybe it was time to pay for his sins. But Hubley didn't make any threatening move. Instead, He reached for a chair and dragged it noisily over the floor. It's okay if I sit down? He said in a very non-threatening voice. Do I look as if I'm in any condition to get off the bed and stop you? Hubley nodded. He sighed as if embarrassed to speak. How are you feeling then? As good as you look, I'm guessing. Jet tried to smile, as if he wondered there was a conspiracy with the nurse. Or was that what people always said to someone in the hospital bed? Did I say something funny? Hubley said, puzzled at Jet's response. No. Answering your question. You would be right, Jet said cautiously, feeling very vulnerable. I brought some fruit, Hubley said self-consciously. It's what people do when they visit someone in hospital, isn't it? Jet had no idea of any proper bedside protocols. Hubley didn't wait for an answer anyway. Don't know if you prefer apples or oranges, so I brought both. Jet looked at the man's outstretched arms. He had a single piece of fruit in each hand. Hubley saw his look. Yeah, I know. But do you have any idea what fresh stuff costs in the commissary? These two cost me almost 3 hours' wages. Jet had no idea why he smiled again, but he did. Or at least he tried before the discomfort made him wonder how he was ever going to bite into an apple ever again. He wasn't sure Hubley had thought of that, but neither was he going to point it out for him. I'm told you did well. Hubley gave him a look of admiration. Still, 4-on-1 was never a win situation, whoever it is. Wasn't that the whole point? Yeah, of course. But most people would try and run. You didn't. What's the point? Sooner or later they'd have me down some dark corner. So I decided to get it over with. A thought suddenly sent a shiver down Jet's spine. It is over with, isn't it? Hubley gave him a reassuring nod. There was a brief silence as if neither man knew what to say. The nurse said I was lucky, Jet said at last. You were. You were setting a bad precedent. I'm more concerned about having ended up down the shaft. That too, agreed Hubley. There was another pause until Jet spoke. Instead, somebody brought me here. Again there was silence. Jet knew the answer, but he still asked. I'd be dead, wouldn't I, if that person hadn't stopped them? An eternity at the bottom of a mine shaft is a long time, Hubley replied critically. Was that you? Hubley didn't give Jet time to pursue the question before he continued. Not really fair, 4-on-1. But 3 is? 3 was to test you. How else can anybody get your full measure? Jet grunted. You're telling me that was just a test? This place ain't no kindergarten. Jet smiled. I don't know. When I was a kid, I knew some who did pretty rough finger painting. It was a lame joke, but Hubley laughed anyway. Maybe so. But you won't have any more problems. Not now the others know you're with me. I'm with you, Jet said in surprise. You think you want some more persuasion? No, I know when to quit. Anyway, you think union fees are extortion. Without union insurance, Benedict will have you paying for all this. Hubley gestured around the room. For a very long time. I was intending to arrange for some compensation. Like I was saying, if you have any sense, you'll forget it. How I feel at the moment, it's not going to be easy to forgive and forget. Then in that case, you are a dead man. Look, fella, let's get down to some home truths. Like I said, this is not kindergarten. Loners don't survive. You have protection, or sooner or later you disappear. End of story. Full stop. Dead end. And don't give me the shit about being able to look after yourself. You're good. You're very good. I'll give you that. But nobody is unbeatable. Sometimes, someplace, your guard will be down and you're gone. But Finn and the others know that to take out a union member and you get Benedict's attention. He doesn't mind a bit of rough stuff, but neither does he want killings all over the place. He wants us to know if we follow his rules and be good little boys, everybody is happy. Pin-nosed Benedicts will look away from a bit of persuasion. But like I said, don't attract Benedict's attention. If he sends in his goons, we're all dead. They have they have firearms, and they don't ask questions. They solve problems the instant judge, jury, and executioner way. No, Benedict likes to keep us all at each other's throats, and while we're squabbling, he keeps control. Do I make myself clear? I guess so, said Jet meekly. Look, I'm no good at the smarty bedside stuff. Get on your feet again, and we'll have a drink, and make bygones become bygones. Jet wasn't a miner, but he did know how to organise men, and being quick on the uptake, he soon knew enough about extracting materials to gain the respect of his crew and his superior. Soon he was a foreman. Jet also had another quality that set him apart from the average roughneck. He wasn't seduced by the drink and the girls. Not that he didn't enjoy either, but unlike most of his peers, he knew when enough was enough. So management began to consider him a more reliable worker and not just day labour. He soon came to realise that accidents were more than just common, and not just those inflicted by the unions. Most were down to fatigue and the dangerous conditions. He realised too that the hospital wasn't all it was supposed to be either. Certainly they treated injuries, but the cost was horrendous, and he encountered many who simply tended the wounds best they could and kept on working. It seemed the way the place ran was to work men to their death and then charge them for their funeral. Culver City had a veneer. Below that, it was every man for himself. Chip was eating his evening meal in the cafeteria when Hoobley entered and saw him. There was a moment's hesitation, and then the man walked directly over and put his hand on the back of the opposite chair. He looked at Jet, and Jet nodded in unspoken reply. Hoobley pulled the chair across and sat down. "Fish," he said, looking at the meal set out on Jet's plate. "Apparently. They can make anything nowadays. I'm told it's called grunter from some water world somewhere." Hoobley began to laugh. "Is that what they told you?" Jet shrugged. "What's it like?" "Fish. Can never tell with fish. Frozen, hydrated, canned. Don't matter by the time it gets here. It's as good as off already." Jet was starting to lose his appetite. Hubbley seemed anxious to speak. What a lot of places like this need, is a reliable, regular supply of good, fresh produce. Jet nodded again, barely interested. "It's what I'm going to do when I have enough saved to get off this hunk of rock," Hubler said in an out-of-the-blue way. Jet was not just surprised at the admission, he was intrigued. Barely more than a few days before, the man was beating the shit out of him, and now he was opening up about his hopes and aspirations as if they were old friends. Doing what? Jet had to ask out of pure curiosity. "Courier stuff." "Courier?" Jet almost spat his food in surprise. He looked at him in an annoyed way. "Why is it everybody thinks that's funny?" "Nothing." "No, there ain't," Hubler said indignantly. "How do you think that fish got here? It swam all the way from that water world?" "No, somebody brought it and made a fortune without breaking their back." "I'm sorry, I just wasn't expecting that." Jet began to wonder if he should push the fish aside and leave. "Just because I look like one of Benedict's thugs doesn't mean I can't have a dream." "I'm sorry," Jet said, and he truly was. He was making the mistake of stereotyping that he knew he shouldn't be doing. He tried to lighten it up. "Actually, I thought you were, one of Benedict's thugs." Hubert gave a shrug and a smile. "You should know how it is. When you're a place like this, you got to survive. Like you." "Me? I got beat up." "Yeah, you did. But you took the beating in style." Jet couldn't help laughing. "Don't get offended, but that's just about the most stupid attribute that anyone has told me I have. On the contrary, Jet, you're a man I could work with." Jet was silent for a moment as he tried to understand the hows and whys of what he saw as the most contradictory man in Culver City. Before he spoke, trying to steer the subject away from himself. I seem to remember you already have workmates. Hubley smiled. Them? Nah, they're just gorillas. He looked directly at Jet. Oh, not them. Somebody with a bit of class. Somebody like you. Jet stopped eating and looked at him in amazement. I've been checking on you, Hubley said. By all accounts, you're honest. Can look after yourself when it's needed. Yeah, well, I already know that for a fact. Thanks for the free character assessment. You're welcome. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you've got the wrong man. I have no ambition beyond what's for breakfast tomorrow morning. Yet, you can see the wrecks that this place makes of men. You're better than that. You know this is not where you should be. There was another short silence before Hubley continued. So what was it? A woman? I came to realise I lived my whole life fighting for the wrong reasons. If you want to put it that way, then that's true for half the rest of us, and the other half just won't admit it. But that doesn't mean anybody has the excuse to give up. You didn't spend your whole life physically destroying other people's lives like I did. I don't know what demons you keep buried inside you, Jet, but none of us are the people we wanted to be when we were fresh-eyed kids. All the dreams were crushed out of us as life passed us by. But most people do something about it, or at least try. I did try. The fact is that it would have been better for a lot of people if I had never been born. Hubley shook his head sadly as he stood. Well, if that's what you really think, then maybe I've got the wrong guy. I'll pass on the fish. Yeah, that's probably for the best. Well, so long, Jet. Keep clear of accidents. I'll try. Jet hesitated, realising that although apparently Hubley knew something about him, Jet knew nothing about the man. It seemed that Hubley read his mind. He stopped, half turned. Charlie, he said. Charlie Hubley. But my friends call me Chub. 2 months later, Jet was made transport supervisor. He had an office on the asteroid surface where he oversaw a fleet of automated dump drones that brought ore from whatever they were scavenging to the ancient processing plant. It was at this time he first saw the Silver Star. From gossip, he knew about Hiram's space yacht, and now it was supposedly acquired from an alien race during one of Hyman's dubious schemes. It was certainly unusual. Every spacecraft Jet had seen looked like something put together from a scrapyard. The star was sleek and a glossy silver, hence the name. While other spaceships' thrusters seemed to grunt and wheeze, the star was effortless. And if the talk was to be believed, its technology was revolutionary, powered by some strange process where light was reflected or split or something through a diamond. He wasn't an engineer, so all the detail went over his head. Gossip was that it was Hiram's interest in the gem that had drove the desire to get his hands on the spaceship. Once he did, he had had it converted into an ultra-luxury personal transport while retaining its cargo-carrying capacity, apparently so he could claim it on tax deductions. Whatever the true story, it mesmerised Jet, and only the urgent warning sound that a drone had landed hard brought him back to reality. Time passed, and for the first time since Jet had arrived, he began at last to feel normal, or as normal as anyone could be in a place like Culver City. He had climbed the ranks and now was division manager. For the first time in a long time, he began to think of a future, and one was offered to him by Hiram. Hiram shook his hand. I've heard good things about you, Mr. Black, very good things. Jet wasn't sure how to reply, so he just smiled. In fact, I'd be willing to say you are potential executive material. Jet had even less of a reply, but the smile faded with surprise. I need men like you in positions where they can use their talents as an advantage. Hiram paused. Probably Jet thought for emphasis. This isn't the time and place to discuss detail, but the head of customs and cargo has to attend meetings on some planet or other. There is a deputy, but I'd like to give you the chance to show your mettle by taking over the position. I stress it isn't long term, just while he's away, but do well, and I'm sure something else will come up that could be yours. Jet was flabbergasted. I don't know what to say, he replied meekly. I expect you to say yes, but as I said, it's not the time or the place to discuss it right now. Come to my office at 11 tomorrow, and we can go through the detail. But now you will have to excuse me. I have others to meet and duty to do. Holmes shook his hand again and walked away, leaving Jet absolutely stunned. Jet arrived at Holmes' office early, overflowing with quickly researched information on the customs and cargo section. Much he had known was hearsay and rumour, but now he knew that the section was responsible for every movement on and off the asteroid. Mainly it was to do with shipping the individual cargo wherever it was to go. The rest was incoming materials and personnel. He would have records on all arrivals, though considering many didn't reveal their true past, this work simply meant placing them in whichever work area needed extra men. Besides, there was the customs section, checking that everything arriving was supposed to be what it was supposed to be. From what Jack could tell, Hiram knew everything from the contents of parcels from families to how much and where workers' wages were sent back home. Before you tell me your decision, began Hiram, I need you to understand that the pay and privileges you will receive do not come cheaply. Upper-level staff need to be discreet and occasionally act independently outside their official duties. Jet nodded, knowing there was always a catch. I know in many situations there are things that need doing that are best not discussed, and sometimes those things would not be approved if they were. So, do you want the position? You're offering me the job? Jet said in surprise. That is what you were here for, Mr. Black. But I just walked in the door. Yes, and your point? Don't you want to know anything about me? Jet offered Benedict the quickly written resume. Benedict pushed the papers back. I know all I need to know. But you're not going to interview me? An interview is unnecessary. I'm actually offering you the position. Then yes, I'll give it a try. Jet tried to sound blasé, but Hiram's reply wasn't what he expected. I don't want you to try. I expect you to give me your total loyalty. That is what I expect. Jet felt chastised. I'll do whatever you ask me, Mr. Benedict. Hiram's frostiness disappeared as quickly as it had come. Very well. Tell me, what do you know of my yacht? The sudden change in topic threw Jet, and he wasn't sure how much he did know or what was false. It's beautiful. Hiram laughed. Indeed it is. But this is a business, and in business everything is an item in the ledger. According to those documents, it is a liability. Its value to my organisation is low. You look surprised. I am, I thought. Valuations are more than looks, Mr. Black. I expect you have listened to many of the rumours. In general, it is a load of metal with a very valuable part at its centre. A diamond. Yes, and not just a diamond, a very special diamond. If I was the kind of man who believed in myths, I would tell you that it came from the heart of a star. But we know that's just superstitious fantasy, don't we, Mr. Black? Holmes' voice suddenly changed. Or do we? Wherever it came from and whatever its story or myth, it is a very, very special diamond, one like no other in the cosmos. Jet was mesmerised until Hiram suddenly became more businesslike. In practical times, it is a very valuable diamond. In fact, the gem itself is worth vastly more than the value of the yacht. Hiram went quiet, but his facial expression said all he needed to do. Jet wasn't entirely sure what was coming next. Fascinating, was all he could think of saying. Indeed it is. Mr. Black, can I trust you to care for the diamond until I want it back? Jet forced a gasp of disbelief. Me? You want me to? Until I want it back. Yes, that's what I just said. Well, yes, of course, I'll do it, yes. Jet's mind was in turmoil. But through the confusion, something was trying to make itself heard. And then it was clear, and suddenly Jet was nervous. I'm not sure I completely understand. I don't see what's complicated. You keep that. No, it's not that. Maybe I've heard the wrong story. But isn't the diamond the power source? Actually, it's more than the power source. The power source needs the diamond. Then, if it needs it, how is the silver star going to power itself? It can't. Then the yacht is useless and worth nothing. Hiram smiled. The yacht is insured. This time Jet understood. He nodded again, realizing he was now going to know the real reason for his sudden promotion. It will have an accident. Yes, and one in which the yacht is totally lost. Hiram smiled again. Jet wasn't sure if he was meant to say the words, but he did. And you get the diamond and the insurance. No, snapped Hiram. Well, not immediately. I get the insurance, and the diamond goes to a safe place until the time is right. And that's your job. It was illegal. Jet was well aware that he was crossing the line this time. He had done lots of things, but never anything criminal. If you're having thoughts of double-crossing me, you need to remember nobody will fence it for you. No, Mr. Benedict, the thought wasn't in my head. No, of course it wasn't. Hiram took Jet's hesitation as an agreement. You have an associate, Mr. Hubley. The question pushed any thoughts of illegality from his mind. Chubb? Is that what people call him? Anyway, you spend recreational time with him. Jet nodded. It was true. Chalk and cheese as they were, they had struck up a friendship. I am informed he is something of an electronic genius. Genius? Jet wasn't sure of that. But Chubb certainly knew a whole lot about mechanical things. Yes, I believe he is. Then it should be no problem for him to change a few settings or make a few alterations. You can sort that out with him. Me? Jet stuttered in surprise. It confounded Jet, and now Hiram just assumed Chubb and he would break the law at Hiram's whim. He was about to say so, but then remembered Chubb's dream, and how he had said I would get off this place if I had enough money. Jet realized he was at a pivotal moment, and not just for him. If he turned around now and said no, he would ruin Chubb's chances of the future he dreamed of. At least he owed Chubb the right to do that himself, so he swallowed the protest. You don't expect a man in my position to discuss matters with a workman off the shop floor. No, Mr. Black. That's why I employ people to manage. No, of course. Yes, I will talk to him. Jet expected Chubb to say no, but knew if whatever needed to be done could be done by anybody, Chubb would be the one. The thought about Chubb's future got him thinking. He had no future, so money wasn't the motivator. But he could set his friend up for life. He spoke tentatively. So we know what you gain. What do I get? Benedict seemed surprised at Jet's demand. You have the new position. I have the position temporarily. Okay, go on. What do you propose? Insurance companies don't like being cheated. If they were to believe it was deliberate, they would throw everything into finding the culprit. It's your job to make sure it looks like an accident. Even so, they will likely inspect the debris, almost certainly. And when they do, they won't find the diamond. No, they will assume someone has it, and that someone is me. I don't picture you as the kind of person who will walk around bragging you have it. Even so, I may have to pay others for their silence. For starters, Chubb won't break the law for nothing. It has to be worth the risk to us all. Hiram nodded. So, what is your price? Jet had no idea. But it would be a very long prison term. Suddenly he remembered Hiram's own word. The price of the silver star, he blurted out. The star? Hiram looked at him, shocked and puzzled. You said the star is useless and worth nothing. You want the diamond. Give me what the star is insured for. Hiram looked at him, his face serious. Mr. Black, I seem to have undervalued you. You are correct. The yacht is a triviality. A sly smile came over Hiram's face. Very well. Once the yacht is no more, the insurance valuation is yours. Chubb was shaking his head. Jet, you've been set up. You mean I couldn't get the promotion on merit? Replied Jet indignantly. What I'm saying is that you're given a dream job with enough cash to set you up for life. Why? Benedict's got 100 goons who will do whatever he says without any of that, and goons that connect straight back to him. But you won't, Jet? No, he will do across you, us. The cash won't be there and we'll get fingered, or worse. Strangely, Jet felt a little deflated. He had begun to warm to the idea. Maybe he was missing the excitement of his previous life. Yeah, well, I've run it past you. I didn't really expect you to go for it. And you will? I don't know. Jet was telling the truth. He wasn't a criminal, but the insurance hadn't been generous to him when he was in hospital. Anyway, as Hiram said, a hunk of metal, who would really care? Look after the diamond, Chubb muttered. What puzzled me, Jet, is that Hiram is going to trust you just to hand it back. You think I can't be trusted either? Good people could get tempted with something like that in their hands. But it's more than that. It's actually worthless to you. A diamond is worthless? That one is. It would be just too hot. Nobody will fence it or want to go anywhere near it. But he knows that. Believe me, the diamond is worthless to us. Yet you've been on the right side of the law. Me? Well, I've known lots of people like Benedict. They weigh the odds and they don't do anything without closing every loophole. So you have the diamond, it will be hot, it will just burn a hole in our pockets until we hand it over for a pittance. Jet knew Chubb was right on every count, but he had been in no-win situations before and come out on top. He was sure he would this time. Jet had been in the new position for 2 days when Hiram came into his office. How's it going, Mr. Black? Great, taking a little while to master all the detail, but Frank outside is making sure everything is right. He would, said Hiram. He's been with me forever. He hesitated. Mr. Black, I want that little matter we discussed closing tomorrow. Tomorrow? Gasped Jet. But it's too early. Hiram was adamant. Early? I don't remember discussing advance notice. It has to be tomorrow. Jet looked towards the door, making sure it was closed. Mr. Benedict, I have meetings tomorrow. If I have to take the star, it's going to create suspicion. Hiram looked at him puzzled. I run this organisation, and if I decide things change, they change. I have already arranged for you to be met and transferred to another ship to deliver you somewhere safe. I thought you wanted it stolen. No, I don't remember saying anything about stolen. I want it destroyed. Yes, but I had this plan. Hiram cut Jet off. This position gives you the authority to load and unload at will. You will arrange for explosives to be loaded into the cargo bay. Benedict placed a package on Jet's desk. This is a timer. It is preset to detonate between your departure and the star's arrival at its destination. On its way? Jet slowly began to realize how deep he was. That means somebody will be... Mr. Black, I am not asking you to do anything that you have not done innumerable times before. And in the process, I'm paying you a fortune, just so you can go for a luxury ride to a place where you can live in luxury until we can arrange for you to return my property. Jet's mind was in turmoil. Suddenly everything was way out of control. Insurance fraud was one thing, but Hiram continued without a pause. Hubley modifies the wiring and you both transfer ships so that you're out of the picture when it explodes. Explodes? Then what about the diamond? It's a diamond, Mr. Black, one of the hardest substances known to man. Jet's brain was slowly catching up. It will be blown into space and lost. Yes, but no. The package also contains an aerosol dispenser. It contains a tracer element. You or your Mr. Hubley will give the diamond a liberal spray so that it can be relocated by a, he emphasised the words, search vessel. Jet was shocked, but he tried not to show it. The crew? Not a crew, just one person. The ship is, how can I put it, has a mind of its own. Hiram seemed totally dismissive of the pilot's life and just carried on talking. But Jet interrupted. That will be murder. Mr. Black, Hiram seemed exasperated. It's not the first time you have committed that activity. The guilt Jet thought he had begun to conquer flooded back. I thought we were going to, he said meekly. I've just said this isn't how I wanted it done. You were a soldier. You have killed many people. What's one more? He had, but there was a way he didn't have to anymore. Hiram seemed anxious. You don't intend to back out of our agreement, do you? No, I'll do as you want. Then tomorrow, Mr. Black. See, it is done. Chubb seemed less measurably concerned than Jet had been. He listened, his face serious, until Jet had finished. It can't be a complete surprise, Jet, he said. It's puzzled me for a while what he was up to. Then, strangely, Chubb smiled. At first I thought he was after you, he said. Maybe there's something in your past that he wanted revenge for, or, I don't know, something. Jet thought on how Benedict was right. He had killed a lot of people. Maybe at some time in the past his squad had thwarted some scheme Benedict had. But it seemed over the top to target the tool instead of the organisation that had sent him on the mission. So what did he say was his plan? Chubb continued. An insurance scam? Chubb shook his head. Benedict's got more cash stashed away than he can ever hope to spend. So much of the insurance on the Star is pocket money. Truth up, I doubt he's even bothered about the diamond. I can't work it out yet. Without the alien technology, the ship's a pile of junk. The diamond is just a diamond, a big diamond I'll give you, but still just a diamond. Nothing makes sense. The same thoughts had crossed Jet's mind. Nothing made sense. But we don't know his mind. Chubb was shaking his head slowly from side to side in a way of complete confusion. When he slowed and fixed his eyes directly into Jet's, a look of understanding, incomprehension came over his face as he slowly let out a drawn, "Oh, of course, that's it." Jet looked at him puzzled. At last Chubb spoke in a kind of way that showed he had broken a secret code. "Of course, you know who the pilot is, don't you?" Jet looked at him curiously. "No?" Chubb seemed to have convinced himself. "Then you haven't bought into the gossip?" "I switch off when any of it starts." "Then you won't know his target is Rosie." Jet had heard the name mentioned, or more correctly, heard it sniggered. Apparently she was absolutely gorgeous, but coming from the average Culver roughneck, that wasn't much of a compliment. Hiram called her his niece, but most of the workers assumed she was one of his toys, and probably that was what Hiram intended. But others said Rosie wasn't that kind of girl, and it was a more complicated relationship. The story ranged wildly, but it seemed Rosie had been the result of a brief affair. Once he knew Hiram had broken off the relationship. Pregnant with Rosie, her mother had returned to some planet and had been forgotten by Hiram years ago. As far as he had been concerned, that was the end of it. But if the rumour was to be believed, it seemed Rosie had come looking for her father with DNA proof and enough legal documents to make him nervous. For all his ruthlessness, Hiram was not a fool and realised she had grounds to make some sort of claim. So to keep litigation at a minimum, he had convinced her to join the company where she would quickly work her way up, but jobs for females were almost non-existent. So she had been sent back to college to study business. That gave Hiram breathing space. Talk is that recently she graduated and returned, Chubb said, taking over Jet's unspoken, half-assembled story. Hiram made her the Silver Star's pilot. Apparently, he told her that attending meetings and forming relationships with the company's contacts would set her up to enter senior management. Chum's voice had taken on the kind of attitude a dog had when it saw a bone. Maybe she's begun to suspect he was never going to keep his word. He began to speak with a voice of authority. I heard apparently her lawyers are ready to serve documents. He sighed in satisfaction at his mental gymnastics. Well done. Anyway, that's the sum of the rumours, and putting two and two together. Jet nodded meekly. At last it all did seem to make sense. Chubb had been right all along. They had been set up. They would never get the money or the diamond. Instead, they would be blamed with her murder. We can't go through with it, Chubb, he said determinedly. Chubb nodded. Need to come back out now we know what he's planning. He's not going to let us carry on as if nothing happened. We can't run. We can't hide. We know his secret. And we're going to be stuck here on this piece of rock, trapped, waiting for Hiram to come and get us. Jet looked at him pathetically. I'm sorry. And he was. I never intended to drag you into something like this. Jet felt miserable, but Chubb didn't seem disheartened. In fact, he smiled with a big, wide smile. Jet sat nervously looking at the clock, conscious and strangely reassured by the bulge under his suit's jacket. Suddenly the phone rang, so loud that he advertently jumped in the chair. He picked it up. Done, said a voice before the phone went dead. Brief as it was, he recognised it as Chubb's. Jet dialed the number Howard had given him. Just calling to let you know the contract has been closed, Mr. Benedict. Excellent, Mr. Black. And our associate is on board? He said just as secretly. On board? Yes, he's completed the matter we talked about. Oh, that on board? Yes. Good. Then bon voyage, Mr. Black. Jet stood and walked through to his reception area and paused in front of Frank. He wondered if the man was in on everything. I'm off then, if anyone calls, he said. Okay, Mr. Black, Frank replied pleasantly. See you when you get back. Jet walked out of the building. Further down the tunnel, he could see a small group of men casually talking. He turned the other direction, towards the spaceport. Barely moments later, he felt a strange, prickly feeling in the back of his neck. Some called it a sixth sense. But you didn't live long as a soldier, as he had been, without developing an overactive feeling of suspicion. Looking for every reflective surface, and as casually as he could, he glanced back and saw the men had begun following him. His instincts fully kicked in, and without obviously hurrying, he turned a corner before he broke into a sprint. Seconds after they turned too, the sound of rapid, heavy footfall echoed down the tunnel. It was a bad place to be caught. If Jet had had an inkling, he'd have chosen elsewhere. His breath began to quicken as the first shot ricocheted off the wall close by, riveting his sense of self-preservation into overdrive and his assumption into confusion. Remember what Chubb had said. Only Benedict's goons have guns. Another shot splattered him in concrete from the tunnel's roof. It cost time to look back, so he didn't. He began to take evasive action, but it was impossible in a place like this. It was well chosen, and the only consolation was that they weren't trained soldiers. If they had been, they wouldn't be chasing him. At least one would have stopped and taken proper aim. He would be dead. His mind began to equal the odds. It was time to slow them down. He thrust his hand into his pocket and his fingers grasped the butt of the pistol. He had scoffed at Chubb when the man had suggested they get some, what he called, protection. So who was the fool now? It was what people called a Saturday night special. an improvised firearm, 3D printed, or made of pretty much whatever was to hand. Specials were often heavy, always unrifled, and especially dangerous, whichever side of the gun you were. But with weapons unavailable to workers, it was the best Chubb's friends could do. It was time to see if they had lost the edge. The movement had to be fluid, but there wasn't much time to go through it mentally. 10 seconds was all he could allow. Mark 0, forward roll, exit into the left knee crouch. Mark 4, right shoulder back, minimum target. Mark 5, aim. Mark 7, Mark 8, fire. Right, here goes, he thought. Chet hadn't lost his touch, and the action was smooth and the aim was true. One of the thugs was down. It wasn't intended as a kill shot, and the aim was a bit off. A flesh wound at best, or worse, but enough, demonstrated as the others threw themselves to the ground. The noise was ear-shattering, and the recoil was immense. He remembered it even more vividly, the lecture telling him how specials killed more users than victims, but it had the desired effect. All he needed was a few more minutes. Mark 13, and he was running again. His only excuse, that he was rapidly becoming out of breath. Rosie looked harshly at Chubb. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "We've got clearance. We need to go." He couldn't explain the inexplainable, but he just knew they couldn't. "Just a bit longer." "What for?" she said angrily. "They said he wasn't coming. We have no reason to wait." They did, just Chip didn't know what it was. "Neither have we reason to go," he argued. "We're making our own timetable. That's not the point. Control have cleared us to leave. Cargo is secured, and he's decided not to come, and I'm becoming a very impatient person." "I'll go and look," he said, because he had nothing else to say. "You do that." And she glanced at the chronograph on the Silver Star's dashboard. "I'll give you 5, not an instant more. Then I'm gone, whether you are back or not." Chubb was anxiously pacing the pavement just outside the hangar door when Jet arrived, out of breath. "I thought you had bustled out on me," he said sharply. Jet was too out of breath to answer. "Come on, she's going to go without us." Chubb turned and began to hurry back into the hangar. You were going to leave?" Jet panted. "Flight control passed a message saying you wouldn't be coming and we were to go without you." Jet shook his head. "Had a bit of company. I couldn't get rid of." Jet's words were cut short as shots rang out. Reflexively, they both crouched but didn't stop. "You didn't have to bring a goodbye party. Now, why aren't I surprised?" Chubb grunted. "Seems Hiram has changed his mind." "You mean tidying up all the loose ends that connect back to him?" Jet followed Chubb across the hangar and immediately wanted to stop. He had seen the Starship from a distance, but never so close, and he was dazed. Its sleek and stunning lines filled his senses with pleasure. He couldn't imagine how Hiram could ever think of destroying such a beautiful thing. Its silver fuselage seemed to shimmer in the heat from the idling engines. He was so awed that it took another round of fire, this time from a machine pistol, to make him squeeze the last drop of energy to follow Chubb up the ramp. Chubb was smiling as he entered the Star, and he hit the ramp retract button immediately. Jet was still in awe as he followed Chubb onto the flight deck. A young and extremely attractive woman was stood waiting, and she was apparently extremely annoyed. She looked at Chubb and then at Jet. "So you're this jet black character?" Jet smiled weakly, so out of breath it was all he could do. "They told me to go without you, so why are you here now?" "Actually," he said, trying to control his breathing, "there was no change. Maybe we can get going, and I can explain later." Jet offered the customs clearance papers to her, suddenly becoming aware his hand was shaking. To cover his embarrassment, he pushed the document into hers. "Enter the number in the top right." "I know what to do," she snapped. "What I don't know is what the heck is going on." The communicator buzzed. Silver Star, is there a problem? Asked the control tower. Rosie ignored the question. Well, we're here to save your life, Jet blurted out, in the least dramatic way he could. She was obviously angry at the delay, but his response seemed unexpected. What are you talking about? She said slowly. Jet pulled the dictaphone from his pocket and pressed play. Hiram's voice filled the cabin. I don't want it stolen. I want it destroyed. He pressed fast forward. This position gives you the authority to load and unload at will. You will arrange for explosives to be loaded into the cargo bay. Forward again. This is a timer. It is preset to detonate between your departure and the star's arrival at its destination. And yet again. Hubley modifies the wiring and you both transfer ships so that you're out of the picture when it explodes. Jet saw her expression and pressed pause. There's more. I can play it all. But those guys outside will already be organising something. Chubb interrupted. Can I second that and add that we leave the rest of any explanation till we are less than pressed? Like, way, way away from here. Rosie's anger had been replaced by shock as she looked out of the viewport. Outside, a couple of men were intently watching the ship. Wordlessly and with gesture, she engaged the main engine. The men scattered as the Star's landing gear retracted and the craft began to hover. I don't know what's going on, but at the moment my job is to deliver what's in that hold, she said, as without anything being touched, the Star began to move. They flew straight down the access tunnel as the code was opening the outer doors, and the Silver Star leapt off the asteroid and in moments was weaving through the field of mining debris. It was some time later that Rosie looked at them both. He wanted me dead, she said with a surprising absence of surprise. All of us, said Jet. Once Chubb had set the Star for destruction, it's almost certain both he and I would have been killed somehow. For some reason, Benedict tried to bring my demise forward on my way here. Chubb spoke. Actually, the somehow is that we wouldn't have got to the transfer point. In fact, we should already be dead by then. They looked at him in amazement. Being the suspicious kind of guy I am, I checked the timer's program. Buried in the software was a proximity override set to detonate while we were still within sight of Culver City, giving everybody the fireworks show of the century. Sum total, we would have been disposed of, and he wouldn't have to search half the galaxy to find his precious diamond. Jet nodded. Of course, that was the final loose end. Chubb smiled. And you know what the sweetest thing is? That Hiram was probably sat in his big executive chair with a tub of popcorn and a drink in his hand, waiting for the big bang. And it was a poof instead. He already knows he's lost. Rosie looked at them. I don't know as I believe either of you, but I have to admit, adding my suspicions, it does kind of make sense. When we arrive at our destination, I'll contact the authorities and see what can be done. I don't think there's much point, said Jet. Hiram has the authorities in his pocket. Neither is he a fool. He'll have a plan B, and probably others numbered halfway through the alphabet. At this moment, he'll be setting one in motion. At least, we have to assume that. Fact is, he's played his cards in this game. Everything has to begin anew. We know he wants rid of us all, even more so now. So we can't expect any help or a second chance from anybody or anywhere. I think I can help you there, Jet, grinned Chubb. When I discovered the double cross, I had a quick rummage through the rest of the cargo in case there was a backup bomb. Their attention was suddenly raised. Relax, there wasn't. But what there was a couple of crates of ore samples. Rosie interrupted. Gold ore. It's never mentioned as precious metals in case it gets out to space pirates. But it's on the manifest and it's almost pure. Her words faded as she made up her own mind to what Chubb meant. Wait a minute. You guys are not going to... She backed off towards the cabinet. No, we're not pirates, Jet said indignantly. in his own defence. He pulled out the pistol. In response, she quickly pulled open the door, revealing a stash of weapons. Chubb raised his hands. Jet flicked the gun over to hold it by the barrel. Here, take it. I don't have anything else, but your scanners will have confirmed that. Rhodey made a peculiar sweep with her hand and glanced at a bank of lights as one changed colour. Toss it over there. She indicated the side bulkhead as she pulled out a particularly mean-looking weapon. And yes, they have. So that's it. You're after the gold? Chubb spoke softly in an attempt to ease the tension. Does the documentation say anything about the gold being radioactive? She looked at him curiously. I broke a crate open. You know, the funny thing about greed? With all his wealth, it's never enough. Can I get something from my bag? Be my guest, she said, pointing her gun at him. He saw her finger tighten on the trigger as he pulled out the aerosol can. Relax, it's not pepper gas, it's a tracer. The gold is lathered in the stuff so that he can locate it drifting around in space after we've been vaporized. Jet grunted. Gold? I was wondering what story he'd concoct to explain why we run off with a star. You're forgetting the diamond, Jet. Wait, Rosie said sharply. What do you mean, ran off with a star? We have to get it back. Rosie, he just tried to kill us all, and you want to give him his stuff back? Right now we're delivering cargo, as planned. If we go anywhere else, we're stealing the gold, and the ship will be criminals. What gold? Replied Chubb. All the loaning manifest says is we have ore samples. Then the star, that's stealing. Now Jet spoke. The plan was to commit insurance fraud. I have him on voice admitting it. He knows I'll tell the militia of his plan, so I doubt he'll give me the opportunity. You're sure? Jet shrugged. No. Look, he stitches up pretty tight. If the plan runs through, we're innocent victims. If it doesn't, no one will believe that we're not just common thieves. Anywhere where his influence stretches, Chubb and I will end up dead or incarcerated. He looked at Rosie. And you? You'll just disappear. Chubb grinned. Yep, that's how it goes. He looked at Jet. You're a degenerate, unscrupulous killer. Hang on, said Jet defensively. And me? Well, apparently I'm just a common thief. That's an insult I don't care for. Okay, like I'm not saying if something isn't tied down, but that doesn't mean I don't know right from wrong. When you pair have finished polishing your halos, you think I'm going to let Hiram get away with trying to kill me? Now is not the time for revenge, said Jet, or clearing our names. We're powerless and helpless right now, but I'm certain ours and his lives are going to cross again. And then Rosie put the weapon back on its shelf. At one time I actually thought he was... She sighed. So what now? Jet smiled. Well, Chubb has always had this dream. He smiled as he looked at the man. And given time, I have time to come around to think maybe it's not a bad idea. Chubb's smile morphed into a wide grin. We have the means and we have the capital. I think Benedict owes us them at least. And after all, like it or not, we're already labelled criminals. So we go into business. He looked at Rosie. From what I hear, you are a next-level pilot, and you already know the ship. The three of us as the Silver Star Express. Unless you have other plans? She said nothing, but waited for Jet to continue. Until Chubb did. The Stolen Express Courier Service, at your service. Rosie looked at them in total disbelief. Couriers? Are you kidding me? You got a better idea? Her expression of disbelief eased. We are going to have to work on the name.